Hello and welcome back, grade 12. So today we are continuing with our unit on human response to the environment, and in this lesson we will be focusing on the human ear. So first of all, mechanoreceptors are the receptors that detect sound, stimuli, and movement of the head. So these are the receptors in our ears, and because of this, human ears are important for humans to be able to hear, obviously, so detecting that sound stimuli, and then also maintaining balance. So the balance has to do with the movement of the head. Okay, so that is why our ears are so important to us. So let's take a look at the structure of the ear. First, we have the external ear, where we have the pinna and the external auditory canal that you can see here. Then we have the tympanic membrane that is over there. And then we move over to the middle ear structure. So this is sort of the tympanic membrane, and then the malleus, incus, and stapes. So those are these three little bones that you can see here: the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. And then we have the oval window and the round window as well. And then we have the semicircular canals, the utriculus and the sacculus, which are in here, the cochlea, which leads to the auditory nerve over there, and then the round window as well as the oval window. Okay, so that's the oval window, and this is the round window, and then the Eustachian tube. Okay, Eustachian tube. And you can see that this ear is divided into three separate sections, right? The external ear, the middle ear, and then the inner ear. So in the outer ear, or the external ear, we have the pinna and the external auditory canal. Now the pinna are made of cartilage, and they are covered with skin, and as we know, they protrude on either side of our head. So basically, this is the part of your ear that you are able to see, right? And the function of the pinna is to trap and direct sound waves into the external auditory canal. So the sound waves will come in, be trapped by this little, let's call it a little dish that's catching this sound, and is then transported through the auditory canal. Okay? So obviously then the function of the external auditory canal is to transmit the sound waves from the pinna to the tympanic membrane. Okay? And as you can see here, this external auditory canal is a curved tube that leads from the pinna to the tympanic membrane. Okay, so that is how the sound is captured with the pinna and transported inwards through the external auditory canal. Then we have the middle ear. So here, the middle ear is in the temporal bone of the skull. So we are not talking about external structures anymore. These structures are on the inside, so they are found inside the temporal bone of the skull, and the tympanic membrane is part of this. So the tympanic membrane is a thin layer or membrane, and it covers the opening between the external auditory canal and the middle ear. So this opening here between where the external auditory canal ends and the middle ear begins. Okay, and it is very important because it converts sound waves to vibrations that are then transmitted to the hammer. So the hammer is one of our ossicles. So it converts the sound waves that comes in into vibrations that are then carried further into the ear, into the deeper parts of the ear. Then we have the three bony ossicles, so the malleus, also called the hammer, the incus, also called the anvil, and the stapes, also called the stirrup. So those are these three little bones, and they are joined by ligaments in order to allow them to articulate freely. So because they carry this vibration, they need to be able to move, to transfer the vibration, and because of that, they have to be joined but not fused, and this is why they are ligaments. Okay, then we have the malleus. So we can see here that the malleus, it's attached to the tympanic membrane as well as the incus on the other side, and the stapes is attached to the oval window, but then also the incus on this side. So these little bones together, they form a lever system connecting the outer and inner ear, and they amplify sound. Okay, so that is why they are important. They amplify sound by vibrating. So like we said, they amplify and transmit vibrations to the membrane of the oval window. So that is their function, to transmit these vibrations, to amplify these vibrations, and move them to the oval window. Now this brings us obviously to the oval window, and the oval window is an opening covered by a thin membrane which connects the middle and inner ear. Okay, so again here we have a thin membrane, just like with the tympanic membrane, it is a thin membrane, and it connects the outer, the middle ear and the inner ear. Okay, so the oval window is very important because it transmits vibrations from the air-filled middle ear to form pressure waves in the fluid-filled inner ear. So that means that this middle ear is filled with air and the inner ear is filled with fluid. So it transmits those vibrations, and obviously if there is fluid, waves can be formed in the fluid. So that is what the oval window does. It transmits the vibrations from the air-filled area into waves in the fluid-filled area in the inner ear. Then we have the round window, and this is the opening that is covered by a thin membrane, and it connects the middle and inner ear as well. And this membrane is very important to release pressure from that fluid-filled cochlear canals during hearing. So like we said, there's fluid in here, and this little structure over here, your round window, is extremely important to relieve pressure, because remember now you have air as well as fluid, and there will be a difference in pressure. Then we have the opening to the eustachian tube, and it connects the middle ear to the pharynx. Now remember, the pharynx is linked to our throats, so this is why when you swallow, sometimes your ears block or go open. If you've ever flown in an aeroplane, you know that the change in air pressure might cause your ears to become blocked. And then it usually helps if you yawn or swallow, because our ears, noses, and throats are connected to each other. So this eustachian tube is very important to ensure that pressure remains equal on both sides of our tympanic membrane. So this eustachian tube is responsible for also relieving pressure when there are pressure changes in our environment. Then we have the inner ear. So in the inner ear we have the bony labyrinth. So these are canals and cavities in the temporal bone filled with perilymph fluid. And then we also have the membranous labyrinth. So these are the membranous tubes and sacs filled with endolymph fluid, and then the membranous labyrinth floats in the perilymph of the bony labyrinth. So in this little diagram you can see that the bony labyrinth is indicated in blue, and it contains the perilymph, and the membranous labyrinth is indicated in red, I don't know, orange, pinkish color, and it contains the fluid endolymph. But here you can see that the membranous labyrinth, actually floats inside of the fluid of the bony labyrinth, so inside that perilymph. Okay. So both labyrinths consist of the vestibular apparatus and then also the sacculus and the utriculus. Okay, so the vestibular apparatus contains the sacculus and utriculus and semicircular canals, and these structures, so those are all these structures over here, and they are very important for our balance. So the sacculus and the utriculus are filled with endolymph, and they float in the perilymph. Okay, so if we go back, we can see that, remember, the perilymph part of the bony labyrinth and the endolymph in the membranous labyrinth. So those are the fluids in there. So these sacculus and utriculus also contain maculae that respond to gravity and detect changes in position of the head. So these maculae are like the little hairs in our ears, right? So the inner ear, like we said, consists of the labyrinths, and they both also have this semicircular canals. Aside from the utriculus and the sacculus, they also have the semicircular canals. So these are three canals positioned at right angles from each other. So as you can see here, there are three of these canals, and they contain cristae that detect changes in speed and or direction of movement of the head. Okay, so those cristae are again like little hair-like structures, and they are responsible for detecting the movement of our head. Then the cochlea, this is a long coiled tube that consists of three canals. So the hearing is a very important function of the cochlea. So the organ of Corti is situated inside the cochlea, and the hair cells detect mechanical stimuli and then convert those stimuli to nerve impulses. Okay, so again now here, very important, now the vibrations, okay, and the mechanical stimuli, those vibrations, are converted into nerve impulses in the organ of Corti, in the cochlea. Okay, so the very important for hearing, the cochlea, as the organ of Corti is stimulated inside the cochlea, and the hair cells inside the organ of Corti detects the mechanical stimuli and converts them into nerve impulses. Then we have the auditory nerve. So the auditory nerve is responsible for conducting nerve impulses to the cerebral cortex where hearing is produced, but then also it conducts those impulses to the cerebellum for coordination of balance. So here you can see that the cerebral cortex is very important for us to be able to hear, and the cerebellum is very important for the coordination of balance. And that is it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we will be looking at some functioning as well as hearing defects.